Good afternoon. I'm absolutely thrilled to be with you all today as we launch B Lab Europe. I have to be honest, this is a little surreal to me to look across this amazing room of entrepreneurs and listening to the last 2 hours of inspiring stories, more than a bit humbling. So thank you guys for joining us today. Do you guys mind if I sit? Is it cool? So what I thought, and I'm going to ask everybody in the back, you're more than welcome to come forward, but if you want to have a chat, head to another room. That'd be great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So I thought it would be useful to spend a little bit of time talking about essentially where this came from and how it has grown globally, so you all get a sense of a little bit of the history of what preceded this amazing launch of B Lab Europe. And importantly, perhaps a bit of background about myself would be useful. You see, I'm an entrepreneur. I approach this work as a business person. I ran with a team of great friends for 13 years, a basketball footwear and apparel company called And One. I'd love to see, show who knows And One? Awesome, and thank you all. I have college-age kids, huge help, so thank you. So And One, for those of you who don't know it, was a basketball footwear and apparel company. We made trash talking t-shirts and basketball shoes for kids across the globe. It grew to be about a $250 million company, and we sold it in 2005. And believe it or not, And One was a socially responsible business. Frankly, not because our consumers cared. They didn't. You know, we were making kicks for 18-year-olds. But it was just the kind of company we wanted to run. We wanted to be proud of it, right? We wanted to build a business that we were proud of. And we started with a clean slate. We were beginning our own company. And as a result, we had an incredibly familial organization where 8 dogs ran through the office. We had a basketball court at the back of the office. We balled every day at lunchtime. We had yoga classes in the morning and a beautiful mother's room and a child care center. We extended this familial approach to our factories overseas. We obviously worked with thousands upon thousands of people in the Far East who were making our shoes and our apparel, and we wanted to make sure that they too were living and working in safe conditions. So we had a very rigorous code of conduct that we worked with all of our factories overseas. We also thought that a global business could act locally. What that meant for us was that we gave 10% of our profits away to charity. We had a direct service program with more than 40 hours contributed to every employee a year to give back to local nonprofits. We were just learning about, frankly, the climate crisis, so we were a little bit behind, but we did our part. And I guess the learnings, what drove me to this work was that first it was really clear that business is, in my humble opinion, the most powerful force, man-made force in society. And that secondly, if harnessed appropriately, it really could be a force for good. But what was also abundantly clear was that it's just not structured that way, that there are cultural norms and legal impediments from scaling both profits and purpose. And I experienced that firsthand at And One. I watched as our commitment to our stakeholders as we grew actually was inversely correlated, very oddly, right? We did a leverage recap in 1999 where we brought in private equity players. And when you're not playing with your own money, it gets a bit more challenging. We actually got into a brutal market share war with Nike and Adidas. And when business is going sideways, it gets acutely difficult. And then at the moment of liquidity, right? There was a time when we were done. We had run this business for 13 years. It needed new leadership. We needed to move on. At that moment, when the mission, the purpose of the business kind of hangs in the balance, by law in the United States, you're not allowed to consider it. By law, you must maximize shareholder value. You must take the highest price on the table. Now, importantly, this is not a story of lament. You know, I'm a former investment banker before AND1. We knew what we were doing. But within 3 months of the sale of AND1, whatever remaining commitment to our employees, community, and environment was stripped from the organization by the new owner. Now, he owned it. He paid absolutely fair price. But goodness, it just felt like there had to be a better way. Like there had to be a way that all the wonderful entrepreneurs you've heard from over the course of the last couple of hours could scale, raise outside capital, have a liquidity event, and still know that the purpose, the mission of the business will be maintained. So that's what brought me to this work, the idea that indeed there had to be a better way. And we spent about a year trying to investigate and listen to entrepreneurs about how we could be of service. At the end of that year, we began a nonprofit called B Lab with a really simple mission. We want to support, celebrate, serve, and help scale the leading entrepreneurs in the world using business as a force for good. Our hope is through that leadership, they'll inspire legions of others to follow. So let's talk about those leaders, because at the end of the day, my entire reason for being rests on them. They are my change agents. They are the ones who are alleviating poverty, rebuilding communities, creating great places to work, or preserving the environment. And those leaders have stepped forward. They've grabbed a new identity. And it's just so moving to me to see people here in Amsterdam grabbing this identity, saying, this is who I am. I'm a B Corp. I believe that a company can make money and make a difference. And those organizations, so you know, really are leaders. I mean, they've met the highest standards of social and environmental performance, as evidenced by something we call the B Impact Assessment, evaluating their impact on all their stakeholders, the environment, community, governance, workers, consumers. Once they've passed that really difficult test, they then make sure that those higher standards of performance are built to last in the business. And they do that by changing the governance of the organization, fundamentally rewriting the corporate governing documents to be certain that the mission, the purpose of the organization is not dependent upon a particular visionary CEO, that it can be carried on, that a legacy can be left. And you put those two together, higher standards of social and environmental performance that are built to last by changing the DNA of the business, you have a very robust certification made up by a set of leaders. And leadership matters, folks, and we're starting to see some of that leadership paying off. That impact assessment I mentioned that is used for certification, it's free. It's available for anyone to use. It's completely confidential. So at a minimum, when you leave today, at a bare minimum, please use the tool for what it's there for, as an educational vehicle to improve your impact. It's a do-it-yourself consulting tool that'll act as a roadmap or a guideline, embedded our case studies, best practices, use it year over year and improve your impact. And whether you join us is up to you. But importantly, that's what the tool is there for. And as a result, you would join a community of 25,000 other companies that are currently using that tool to try to do something more with their business than just create private wealth, to actually have a positive impact on society and environment. In addition to those 25,000 companies inspired by our 1,250 leaders from 120 different industries in 43 different countries, they also are inspiring government to act. They're actually advocating for the creation of a new legally recognized corporate form, that rewriting your articles, though very important, isn't enough. That what we really need is a legal entity that embraces the idea that businesses should be accountable not only to their shareholders, but also to creating a truly positive impact on society and the environment. That new corporate form is called a benefit corporation. It's now passed in the United States in 30 different states. There are about 2,600 benefit corporations who are, again, are following the lead of these 1,250 certified B corporations. That new corporate form is now being brought globally. It's being introduced in Canada, in Colombia, in, what's the other market in South America? Where's Juan Pablo? Chile. And then, of course, we hope shortly to have it introduced in Italy as the first European country to adopt this new corporate form. Thank you for your leadership on that. And the other thing that I want to make sure you hear, and I hope you'll see in our panel that follows, is that indeed this movement began in the United States, but we certified more B corporations outside the United States than inside the United States in 2014. This has truly become a global endeavor. We thought there was a need to have a use case from the United States demonstrating that there was a real interest. And once we established that, we met an inspiring group of entrepreneurs to bring this idea down to Latin America, who began in Chile, Colombia, Brazil, and Argentina. Based upon their success, we launched with Alicia in August of last year, B Lab Australia. From there, we're here with B Lab Europe, and moving forward, James will be leading B Lab UK's launch in September. And where's Lenia? Lenia will join this amazing community with leading a launch in Portugal and Lusophone Africa in September as well. The community is strong because of its diversity. It spans big to small. We have multi-billion-dollar companies going down to sole proprietors. It's a cross-impact area. We have companies focused on the deepest social issues of our time across to regenerating the environment. And it also spans geography. Some names that you all might know. On the sustainable business side, obviously we heard earlier from Ecover. We also have Natura down in Brazil. We have Tritos leading here in the Netherlands. We have Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's out of the United States. And that sustainable business leadership spans all the way across to for-profit social enterprises. Fairphone, Waka Waka, Delight Design, Juhudi Kalimo, Ashale Tukasa. All of those are organizations that at their core are using business as a force for good. In fact, that is the commonality. The commonality you will see across this entire community of leaders is they believe that business can be used for a higher purpose. And so, if we back up for a second and try to evaluate where we are, the first question I usually receive from an audience is, wow, really cool. Really cool, but there's got to be a cost. What's the cost of putting environmental and social issues at the center of your business? You must be giving up some profitability. And what's been really interesting is I hope you all have been feeling a change over the last, let's call it 7 years. I'm choosing 7 years intentionally because 7 years ago we began the financial crisis. And I think the financial crisis changed the nature of this conversation. I think that in general, people are no longer accepting of organizations that aren't searching for a higher purpose, more transparency, and more accountability. And there's data now backing this. There are 40 different studies that have been created by everyone from Deloitte to Accenture, from Harvard Business School to the very sustainable Goldman Sachs. Their conclusion is that higher standards of environmental, social, and governance practices acts as a risk mitigator for financial performance. That, in fact, over the long haul, those companies will outperform traditional businesses. That it'll lead to long-term value creation for both shareholders and society. Some other data. Last year, there was a consumer report that looked across the globe about consumers' interest in this particular area. It determined that 88% of global consumers now expect business to balance social issues with business issues. One of the great privileges I have is I speak quite a bit on campuses at universities. Millennials. Can I see a show of hand of millennials in kind of 35 and below? So like, you guys are awesome because you expect something totally different out of business than when I graduated. And there's data backing this up. You all expect both meaning and money in your jobs. 84% of you believe that money no longer is the definition of success for an individual. 63% of you will take a job at 40,000 euros that has meaning versus a $100,000 job that's boring. For anybody over 35, do you remember? Like, not even on the radar when I graduated from college. Like, not even on the radar. I went to Wall Street. I became an investment banker, and every day I went to work and I checked my values at the door. I hung them up next to my coat, and I got to work. And at the end of the day, I left, I grabbed my coat, I grabbed my values, and at the end of the year, I wrote a nice little check to the local Boys and Girls Club. That doesn't fly anymore with millennials. And importantly, for all of us old heads, $30 trillion over the next decade is going to be transferred from baby boomers to millennials. $30 trillion. There's something happening. There's a change afoot. All this community is trying to do is help lead it, to stand out at front, to demonstrate that this isn't just about heart-driven, it's also about head-driven, that these organizations attract and retain better talent. They have more access to capital. They have stronger consumer loyalty. And indeed, they're better places to work. That these organizations believe that business can be an actor in solving some of the world's greatest challenges. In fact, we need them, right? As much as I admire the nonprofit sector and the government, with over 70% of the world's economy happening in the private sector, we must get business more engaged. And so today, on this auspicious day, on the day of the launch of B Lab Europe, I ask you to reflect about what is the role of business in society. What are we all doing here? What role do we have to play? Because I honestly, I don't think it's about a certification. So the certification is a means to an end. It's a means to an end. We have plenty of certifications. We don't need another logo on the side of a coffee bag. What we do need is leadership. We need leaders to step forward and demonstrate that there's a better way of doing business. That, in fact, what we're working together to do is redefine success in business. That the old metrics we've used, PE multiples, earnings per share, gross profit, net income, all important, but not inclusive of the whole. That we must also include employee engagement, community involvement, and environmental footprint in how we evaluate the success of a business. And so I think this is honestly a movement of people. People who believe that we can use business as a force for good, who believe that they can invest in a way with their capital to make money and make a difference, who believe that they can purchase goods that align with their values, who believe that it's okay to bring their whole selves to work. And I know all of you won't end up working at certified B corporations. That's okay. I do ask you to ask more of the place you currently work. And I ask you to ask more of yourselves. Because at the core, this is about us. Thank you very much for your time.